Good day to you today, and welcome to the real estate crowdfunding show syndication in the digital age at gowercrowd.com. I am Adam Gower, and my amazing guest today, Judy Brower Fancher, who is marketing strategist and founder of the Brower Group, is an especially special guest for two reasons. One, she's recipient of Globe Street's prestigious Real Estate Marketing Influencer Awards, as are some other people, he said modestly. And also, I have had the pleasure of working with Judy since 2018, as we share at least one client in common. My experience of working with Judy and her team at the Brower Group is that they are a super smart group of professionals, one of the rare breeds of marketers who understand the challenges of real estate developers, so know how to speak their language. What you're going to find particularly fascinating listening to Judy today is her take on some advanced concepts of building a powerful marketing campaign to raise capital online. Specifically, we talk about the use of copy editing and language patterns from a psychological perspective and approach various aspects of the science of digital marketing. It's absolutely fascinating. You are going to love it. Judy does some phenomenal PR for our mutual client. And here at Gower Crowd, we produce much of the content and all of the technical infrastructure. To learn what the whole system looks like, this is advanced stuff, just go to the podcast page for today's episode at gowercrowd.com and sign up for the whiteboard workshop where I walk you through the entire system in enough detail that you can actually build one yourself. You'll find a link to that right there on the podcast page at gowercrowd.com. All right. That's it. Be prepared to have your socks blown off by one of the smartest marketing professionals in the country, Judy Brower Fancher of the Brower Group. Judy, thank you so much for being on my podcast. You are one of the acknowledged real estate industry influencers by Globe Street. Congratulations for that.
Thank you, and thank you for having me on.
You're more than welcome. And in our dialogue back and forth, before we put this together, you said that you wanted to talk about one thing in particular. I'm going to read it to you, and then let's jump in and tell me about it. So your true expertise would be in discussing the role of thought leadership and other publicity as it relates to the overall marketing puzzle. I would love to know about thought leadership. So please, what is it?
Okay. I'm going to start by saying that our firm is full service and that I began in public relations. And we look at public relations as an art/science, which is influencing people. And of course, with us, it's positively creating a positive influence about a company, about a product, about a property, about why someone's good to invest with, or that that's all public relations. So we see everything else as like a tool within that advertising, whether it's print or digital, whether you're doing social media, whether you're doing email campaigns, if you're speaking at a conference, if you're appearing on a great podcast, that all of that is influential. And so all of it's kind of together, and that's the whole of public relations. So within that, there are things like news releases and thought leadership, which we look at as two separate items. The news releases would be, for example, you are announcing something that you would tell a friend after work. If you went to have a beer with someone that wasn't in your industry, you would say, hey, you know what's kind of cool that happened at work today? And you would tell them about if there was a famous location involved, if there were a famous person involved, if it had a huge dollar number, if it was something that was the first time something had ever happened, or even the last time that something is going to happen, which we did on a shopping center that opened. And, you know, shopping centers open from time to time. And we are in a suburb of Los Angeles. So I called the LA Times and I said, hey, I think this is the last shopping center that's going to ever open, ground up development that's going to ever open in our market. And you guys should cover this. And they're like, that's true, we should. So in addition to all the local, more regional media, we were able to get the LA Times to cover it because it was the last of something. And that's how they kind of used it, of last major regional mall opening today or something. If something is the biggest, that's of interest. We did the first megaplex west of the Rockies. So we called it the big one. We told the client, let's call it the big one. The media all called it the big one. Everybody was like, oh, let's go to the big one. Just being large is interesting. If something is quirky, that can also be very interesting, as long as it's positive. You want to make sure you're not doing something quirky, silly. But if one of your people in your company is a stunt pilot, it's sort of interesting and quirky, and you might be able to get feature stories on that. So anything that you can send out that you think that the media would go, that's really interesting, that could be a news release. Thought leadership, which you know very well, because I've seen that you have done some, doctor, is when you're wanting to tell something that is more complex, more industry specific, technical, if it's more educational than newsy, if you're doing 5 reasons that Dr. Gower can move your firm forward, and you wouldn't quite do that, you would say, you know, the 5 smartest ways to use digital or something. That kind of article needs to be longer. It needs to be from you. And that is a thought leadership piece. And what it does is it creates amazing expertise. You're seen as an expert, which is proven by the fact that the media is using you to cover it. Should I keep going?
If you want to. I mean, if you might hear me typing, that's only because I'm taking notes so that I can remember what I want to ask. But you're more than welcome to keep on going. It's fascinating. I'm really interested.
The way this works in our digital world is that even you and I are doing this digitally. Anybody that's watching is doing it digitally. You aren't meeting people as often. So Google has really become it on wheels. There's just Google and everything that relates to it. So when you're doing thought leadership, you are getting something that could be searched, and people can find you through doing these thought leadership pieces. And they can find you on Google. They can find you if you post these pieces on your website, if you include them on your social. On your social, it's nice to have a picture of you in your office and you show that you have dogs with your, you know, that you let your employees bring dogs in. But what it might be more interesting is National Real Estate Investor article that you're quoted in. That probably for business drives better influence for you. And so you send it out on your social, you put on your website. If you're doing an email, you can do an email about a new property that you have to offer. And you can include recently in the news and have something people can click on, and you keep driving them back to the media to click on this. And when they click on it, Google sees that as being very important because a lot of people are clicking on it. So you're not only ensuring that people see it, you're also ensuring that more people will find it on Google because it's been strengthened by more clicks. When people talk about, we want to do something viral, well, viral is truly organic. It has to be something that is seen so many times that it hits and it goes, and it becomes something that's self-generating. Google keeps pushing it up because more people are interested in it. And then in that way, more people see it, more people see it. And that's how things actually go viral, is because Google supports engagement. So it's really important when you're doing your publicity that you make sure that it goes out to people and they can click on it also. And that way people start seeing you everywhere and they're thinking how interesting you are. And the media is savvy enough.
Hello? Oh, you've frozen. Judy, you suddenly froze. Oh, no. Oh, there we go. There we go. Got you back. Okay. Yes. I bet I recorded everything as well. I'm going to go back. It's just me doing that. See that? All right, but you were saying the media is savvy, right? The media
is savvy, and they watch which of their articles are of most interest to people. So they're also watching the clicks. So when you go and you put your media to use, when you market it through digital channels and people click on it, then the media says, oh my gosh, this article by Dr. Gower is getting so much attention. We need to have him back on again. And it starts your whole cycle over where you have a fresh piece of publicity for people to see in the media and for you to share.
All right, so let me jump in actually. So I've got like a whole page now of questions that I want to
All
ask. Because
right.
at the very core of what you're talking about, it's the idea of thought leadership. Thought leadership, presumably, is the personality. It is a person who is a thought leader.
Yes.
So how does elevating somebody through media, through producing content, through getting press coverage, etc., etc., how does that help an organization with their marketing efforts? Describe to me the dynamic between the personality and the company and their ultimate objective, which presumably is to sell.
Right.
Or
Thank
actually,
you.
in our case, is actually to raise money. Let's stay on topic, right.
I am an investor in addition to being a business person. And I have invested in commercial real estate. And I've had an opportunity through my clients to meet some of them and see how smart they are. And that allows you to feel a level of trust with your money because you feel like they understand. I am not a real estate person. I don't know what's best, but I feel that our clients really, if they are good, smart people, are very good at that. And the old expression is that people work with people they know, like, and trust. And while they may have never met you, when they see you on this podcast and they get to know you, or they read your words, they feel they're getting to know you as an individual and you are driving for your company. So certainly we do always suggest that you use your main key executives, which can include, if you're in a certain market, someone that's a acquisitions guy in a certain market or something like that. But that's how you drive the personality of the person and show that they are an expert, that they are smart, that they are sensible. With investing, you want to show that they have some amount of, probably, most people want to invest with someone that's more stable. So we want to show that the company is very stable and that the leader is stable and smart. And that encourages people to then go ahead and invest with them because they feel that they kind of know the guy because they've been reading about him or seeing him.
Yes, that's right, isn't it? It's quite incredible. I've come to learn that myself. I get contacted quite frequently these days by people who start off the conversation or partway through the conversation. I've never had any contact with them at all, as far as I know. But they say, I feel like I know you. It's extraordinary.
Because they've seen you on the show or read your
article.
article.
Somewhere they've read an article, they've seen a video. I mean, it's, I don't know, I'm putting out 6-7 pieces a day on every single channel at the moment. It's like a machine. So yes, people consume it, and I understand, right? That's that. I mean, it is the nature of what you put out that defines this concept of thought leadership, right? I've had some clients, because that's what we do, right? As well, we create this kind of momentum for clients that they become a thought leader, and some have resisted the epithet, right? They don't like this idea. Somehow it seems immodest to them.
It is, we have people who are a little bit shy of the media, and it's not the best way to push your company forward because as an investor, I'm not sure I want to invest with someone that's shy. I want to have someone that's out there, that has an opinion, that has something to say.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because you do want that as an investor. You want to know how they think, right? If somebody says, come and invest with me, but I'm not going to meet you, you're not going to invest with them. In the digital world, it's the same thing. You have to communicate online in order to be able to communicate. It doesn't mean that you have to show your inner personality or your, like you just said, the doggy or whatever in the office. But if you're, educating, right? That's kind of the key to thought leadership. Would you say?
And we don't think our clients should feel shy about having us help them prepare message points. When we listen to them talk, we learn what they think. Not everybody is a comfortable writer. They don't have to write their own material, but they know it in their head. We can talk to them while they're driving in their car, and they know all of it in their head, and then we can put it down and organize for them. Here's your key points that would really resonate with investors and make them think that you guys are doing something special. And they might not quite realize themselves. Some of these people I'm sure you've met have gotten very successful and keep saying, well, I was just kind of lucky, but really they were savvy.
It's
We
so
have to
true.
tell them, this is why you were savvy. This is what you do different, you know, because like you, we see a bunch of different companies, right? You can compare and understand where their unique points of difference are that they can bring out through this thought leadership. So maybe somebody is looking for a really risky, full ahead guy that they want to invest with. Well, good. You want to show that personality then, if that's who they are.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, the this idea of not knowing, not appreciating how much one knows. It's actually it's a very difficult step to move from not real being humble. It's like this, what's the term? Impostor syndrome, right? You know, what do I know? I've only been doing this for 30 years, you know. And then the other problem is that you end up talking in a language that nobody understands. Right, I bridged this gap because I went actually teaching at university. I started teaching real estate investments and finance. And I remember my first class, I spent an hour talking about real estate investing. And I said, any questions? And the first person, somebody on the front row, put his hand up and said, yes, what's a mortgage? And I realized, okay.
A different starting point.
Okay, let's back up a bit. And that's kind of the point, right? Isn't it? When you're talking to somebody who is extremely expert, extremely, you know, a seasoned professional, real estate developer or sponsor, to draw out of them their true genius, right? And what it is that they see. How do you set about? You said you talk to them on the phone in the car. How do you do that?
Because we have worked with over 100 commercial real estate firms over 25 years. I'm only 26, so it's weird. But we are able to really see their differences because we can hear what they're doing that's different than the next guy, how they're selecting their sites, how they are, and what we do partly to learn from them is we sit in on the phone calls when they're talking to the media so that they are not doubling down on their time. When they're telling the media something about why they did something, we will take notes along with them. And as you're saying, they're not really aware of how different they are and why they are so lucky.
That's right. And you can pick up those nuggets and then expound on that, right? It's fascinating.
Yeah.
All right, so let's kind of switch slightly because there was a word that you used earlier on that actually triggered a line of thought. I just reviewed a book for my publisher actually, and she said I could get money or I could get some of the published books. So I went through Palgrave. So they have these very highbrow books, unfortunately. And one of the subjects that I'm actually fascinated with, they're very academic, so they're not light reads. But one of the subjects that I'm fascinated with is this, and this was the word that you used, Judy, science. You used the word science. I'm fascinated by the science of language. So on the one hand now, you're extracting from your clients those nuggets of their genius, right? Of what sets them apart, that what really is their unique, value proposition. Now, you guys are amazing at turning that into, and I know this because we do share a client, right? So we got to be careful, be very indiscreet. I won't mention any names, but you guys are particularly good at converting that into copy, the science of language. So tell me something about that. I mean, you could get academic as well, if you like. Some of what you've learned in your career or even in your study. I'm fascinated by that aspect.
I would think the science that we use is psychology with everybody. With letting our clients know you do have something to say. We promise you, you are different than your peers. You're different for your reasons. We use science to think about, in psychology, the reporters that we're working with in the media, to tell them, hey, this is something that your readers would be interested in, and here's why. Because they aren't sure always. There's a brand new reporter as of today in Denver in commercial real estate whose background is zero real estate. So we are going to need to explain to that person, and I don't mean this personally if he's listening, but I'm guessing that we will have to explain to him why something is important and why it's different, because he hasn't been following the industry for 30 years. We use science when we go down to the investor communications level. What is it that a physician in Boston is looking to invest in? They don't want the same words. They really don't necessarily want to hear about, they want to hear about investor words. They want to hear about profit. They don't want to hear necessarily about environmental cleanup or about anything else that to us, we understand, oh, the environmental cleanup's all done. It's great. It was before we started and everything. That's not really important to them. We always go to the thinking psychologically about each of the targets that we're talking to and what is important to each of them.
Exactly. What's in it for me, right? From the perspective of the listener, you can't, if you're talking, like you say, about environmental problems or plumbers, right? Nothing against plumbers. Who cares? All I want to know is how much am I going to make, and is it going to be safe at the end of the day, right?
And depending if your investors are institutional versus if they're high net worth, because the institutional guys will want to know about cap rates, whereas the physicians won't even know what that is. They'll be back to what's a mortgage, what's a cap rate. So that's where I think that we have learned how to take the same information and wrap it in the right envelope for each of our audiences.
Right. And so tell me about writing copy. This is something I'm working on really hard at the moment. I'm looking at all my own articles and thinking, gosh, these could all use better subject lines and better titles. So that was kind of when I was talking about the language, and the science language was the structure of language. I'm being kind of technical, right? I forget his name, neuro-linguistic programming. And I just finished reading this. It's the How to Write Copy That Sells. It has about, between you and me, about 3 pages that are of any use. But I'm going to
Not your recommended book of the week, huh?
But I'm gonna, yeah, of course I am. Yeah, he's a nice guy or whatever. Actually, I have got some really good ideas in this. I'm serious. He's actually got I'll tell you what it is. He's got a free downloadable templates with book purchase, right? And my next book, which I'm battling with just about to finish editing. I'm on the last.
Oh my goodness.
20,000 words of editing this thing. It's going to go out with Routledge later this year. I'm trying to persuade them to let me have a little thing that says free software, click here, or free download, click here. It's definitely unusual for them to do that, but we'll see. So you do learn something from everything anyway, right? But what I was talking about was, the structure of language. And, how do you structure? There must be some basic rules that you apply that somebody listening could actually take away and use.
We are huge fans of correct grammar. Even in today's day and age, where people are not as aware of it on the top of their mind as they were, we think that's one of the things when you read something that someone said, if the grammar is not correct, it might strike you that they're not as bright as you would have hoped. People that speak well, and sometimes that means in writing, so that's the copy where we're writing quotes or slightly revising a quote that a client gave us, we're big sticklers on grammar. And I think that's a little bit unusual, but our clients say, wow, you made me sound so smart. And that's part of it, is to be we give writing tests before we meet people in person, because we don't want to fall in love with people that can't write well. And writing is sort of a gift, the way that being a good musician is a gift. It's not that you can't practice it, but that's where the art comes in more than the science, I think. The science is on knowing if we want to use a lot of industry terms for Puri magazine, whereas we want to use very few industry terms in a business journal. So that kind of thing is more maybe a science. But the art side of it is that some people are great writers and some people are not. And I can't paint. I'm sure I could try and I could be taught. But it is a bit of an art that some people have within them, which is why a lot of our clients were saying, you just chat with us on the phone. You guys know this stuff so well. But if they had to sit down and try and write a book like you're doing, they would cry. I mean,
well, that's exactly what I am doing.
in other areas, they don't happen necessarily to be a good writer. Sometimes they are. It just depends. But that's why it's a combination of art and science. The language part of it is about, we believe, knowing who your audience is more than anything.
So let's talk about that. But I have to say this, you know, ever since you said it's all about grammar, knowing as you do that I'm English, the best thing you can do is to learn to speak proper like what I done. One of the old ones, my wife's heard that 1,000 times, but I figured I'd share it with you anyway.
I like that one. I actually, I was once interviewed, and because I don't speak as well as I write with the grammar, that I actually said, you can go ahead and interview me on the spot, which was what he wanted. He called up, hey, will you take an interview? I said, sure, but please correct my grammar when you go through your notes, because it won't look right in print if you just put the exact phrasing that I used in spoken language.
Yes, but you know, this is a very important point that you make, because there is a fundamental difference between spoken English and written English. You know, when I learned to speak Japanese, for example, their language is actually structured specifically differently for written. It's a different language in a way, right? And that applies to the way that we communicate when we are trying to influence people, right? And this back to what you first started with. If you're going to be a thought leader, you want to be grammatically correct and precise, educational and concise. But when you're communicating, if let's say you do a video like this, you want to be a real person, right? Not an automaton as well.
If they practice enough, they will be. That's what we are huge fans of for ourselves and for our clients. If someone's going to give a speech at a conference, if they will practice what they want to say, you can get up and you can improvise, and it comes across beautifully, as opposed to if you just sat down and took your questions without thinking in advance about your message points and knowing what you want to get communicated. All of a sudden, those words do come more easily and naturally and in a human form, and you can tell a joke in the middle of it. It all comes out very nicely, because you do want to be warm, because it's just not know and trust. It's know, like, and trust.
That's right.
You have to make them like you at the same time, so you do want to be human. You're exactly right.
You know, that actually honed my public speaking skills teaching at university. It's the easiest thing in the world. Everybody wants, you know, somebody that's got gray hair. You show up and you sit, you know, can I teach something? They'll say yes. Students, the easiest thing to teach to. And then suddenly you're standing in front of a crowd of adults. It's the same thing at the end of the day. You know, but so you do quite a lot then. So you train people as well to be public speakers, or you prep them? And
we do. We actually, we do video, you know, we do, video of people doing media interviews, so that in addition to how they talk, which I hope I'm sitting up straight, we talk to them about their body language and how that's going to come across. And so that's the same, whether it's a speaking engagement or whether it's something that's done elsewise. We actually encourage people often, if they would like to, during a phone interview, to stand up. Because if you stand up and talk on the phone, your voice comes out differently than if you're, you know, laying back. You'll actually project a better image through your tonal voice as well.
You know, I have to tell you something. You know, sorry, I'm reverting back to old stories. For whatever reason, it reminded me of days gone past. But again, when I lived in Japan, you know, the Japanese custom is when you meet somebody is to bow, right? I mean, you don't shake hands. There's this, you know, degree of courtesy when you bow. And I used to see guys on the phone when I was working, so my staff on the phone when they were talking to, same thing, right?
Just habitually, out of respect,
literally bowed. Yes, because it's kind of, it's innate. And what you're describing is the same thing, right? People can become slovenly, but when you're talking to somebody important on the phone, stand to attention as though they were in front of you, right?
Right.
Think of it that way.
You actually project, but you come across better to them.
Plus you feel more the part. And that's why. It's because it comes from inside. It's more authentic, right? If you're lying back in a chair, right, relaxing, then you are being authentically relaxed. And that's what comes across, right? The key is that you got to be what it is that you're trying to be, right? To be right for the moment.
That's what one of your touch points is, how you're sitting on your chair or whether you're sitting on your chair. The touch points of your digital footprint and your voice and how you your grammar. It's all part of how you're seen and how you're heard and how you're influencing or not influencing the people you're trying to reach.
Fascinating. All right. So let me ask you another question. So I had a quick peek at your LinkedIn profile. And by the way, I love your website. Smart, everything's smart. It's fabulous.
Thank you.
But I had a look at your LinkedIn profile. And the first thing that you say is, I am a game changer. So tell me, what does that mean? In what way are you a game changer, Judy?
My current title in our firm is Chief Strategist. We do not do things the same for any two clients. We are interested in changing the game for them, and you don't change the game by being the same, you change the game by being different, which is why we want to pull those nuggets out from each person or each company to understand their differences. We have, and there's no way to say this without bragging, but it is to the point. We have clients who have quadrupled in size while we've worked with them. We have one client just on the publicity side, on getting out there. He said, I used to go to conferences and try and meet people. Since you guys started doing our public relations, I go to conferences and people come running up to me and want to meet me. And that was a game changer for their firm. It literally broke so much opportunity open. I think that they've at least doubled in the years that we've been working with them. The big one, at theater, it outdid the one in New York Times Square. And we're in a little suburb out here.
Which one? What, the big movie theater?
The big movie theater actually beat the Times Square movie theater for 2 years in a row for sales. We had people from 5 of 6 continents come here to see it. We said, we'll never know how many people are coming to the theater until the developers stop coming to see the work.
You know, I used to build movie theaters. So I'm actually quite interested. How many screens does it have?
I think it's 15. It just was the first megaplex in this, as
I
I
see.
in the Western US, it was the first one. So everybody had to come see it.
Fascinating.
Yeah. But that's, we try and change the game up positively, of course. By being very specific with each company and not doing things by rote. Not saying, oh, it's another one of those kind of guys, we'll just do this. Because obviously in real estate, there are similarities as well. But sales are made on points of difference. And if we want to help them sell, we're going to make them look different than the guy next to them.
You know, it's funny. I actually, I made a proposal to a client 6 months ago, and they went with somebody else. And they came back to me. I'm actually talking to them later today. And they said, look, we're not so happy with what they've come up with us. Here's the kind of the mission statement and the whole thing that they've written for us, etc. And so I replaced the name of their company in this whole document that they sent me with the words, any real estate investor or any real estate developer. And it read perfectly. Any real estate developer will give you passive income and risk-adjusted returns. Any real estate developer. And it read absolutely perfectly. In other words, it was totally vanilla. There was nothing to, it wasn't them at all.
I'm glad they came back to you, but they were smart enough to realize it. You know, that they saw, they're like, wait a minute, this isn't interesting. Yeah,
exactly. That's right. They also have some other issues. I'm not sure if I'll take them on, but that's a whole different subject. They don't know who it is because it's not chronological, this recording, I'm glad to say. No idea. Hey, let me ask you a couple more questions on topic, and then I have 3 quick sign-off questions. I know you said you wanted to do quick answers. Let me ask you this. So you and I I know you have a huge company over there, and you deal with presumably every business that needs marketing and PR. But you and I specialize in real estate developers, and my specialty, as you know, specifically is those that are raising money online. Right? That's specifically it. So what are the biggest challenges in your experience that you find developers have in finding investors, and how do they overcome those challenges? Like, what are the most effective means of doing that? You've talked about PR and news coverage, etc., but there's a whole gamut of stuff. So what have you found are the best practices, best things to be thinking about?
In the digital area, in everything, and I think you heard that in how I was talking as well, targeting is really important. You're not really looking for everyone. I mean, of course, anybody that's looking for an investor would be happy if somebody walked in off the street and said, hey, I've always wanted to invest. But you aren't really looking for everyone. There are ways that you should understand your best investors and who they are and what qualities they share, so that you can target them in what they read. You can target them through your social when you're doing targeted boosting. You can target them with the topics of your webinars. You can, and of course, I guess you're hearing me say it's all important. You want to do podcasts, you want to do webinars, you want to do publicity, you want to do emails, you want to do, and then education. And again, targeted to the right people. The more education you can provide will attract people to you that say, hey, these guys understand me. They understand what I needed to know. They have explained it to me. I now trust them.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Right. What about I'm thinking about from a developer's perspective, it's the step from what I call the analog world to the digital world. How do you help somebody across that line? Because it's not easy to go from lunch to YouTube, for example, right?
That is going to be a function, a little bit of the world changing and a little bit of the ages changing. It will become easier and easier. You do not have to talk a 5-year-old into getting on a computer. And you haven't had to for 25 years. 30-year-olds were also born with computers basically in their bedrooms when they were 3. So that part of that digital divide is going to just happen with aging. But the other part of it, I think, is that educational thing, being available. You know how all this is yourself. If you can make a phone call and someone answers the phone, that human touch for the people, and I'm going to put myself into the older generation because I am, for people in our generation, we do want to call someone if we need to. We've learned to shop online. We've learned to bank online. We've learned all these things. But in case of a problem, it's awfully nice to have some people available to still speak to them if they would like to. And the younger people will never want to. And some of the older people will. And I believe that that's something that's really connected some of our clients with their investors online, is that they are available via phone, anywhere in the country, that they can talk to the people if they have a question, instead of referring them back to the website like they do when you call the telephone company and they're like, please get off our phone and use the website while you're holding. That's just not a good way to win people's trust and make them like you, is getting on the phone and being able to actually help somebody understand something that they have a question with, or discuss their risk profile if they want to invest, of what you're offering versus other people, and why the online thing, it won't really be as big a challenge if they've gotten to talk to someone they trust and get to know the company.
Yeah, so interesting. Our mutual client was talking to me recently and said, yeah, I asked them, so how are things going? Basically, we've been at it a long time. And their response was that the effect is that when they have first contact with a prospective investor, that prospective investor, and I paraphrase now, is significantly further along the sales journey. But there still needs to be, they didn't say this, but it's clear that there still needs to be hand-holding across the line. If somebody comes in and they don't know anything about you, you've got to go through the whole, here's my background, this is what we do, this is why we do it well, now here's the deal. But when you do it online, that's all been done. All that's left is that personal touch. You do still, look, we're not selling widgets, Judy, you know that, right? It's not a $20 widget you're going to buy and forget about if you never use it, even forget you ordered it.
You're probably selling their retirement.
retirement, kids' education, who knows? I mean, these are big checks, 5, 6 zeros after them, right? I mean, these are significant numbers. So you can't expect it's going to do everything. There still has to be that personal touch. But it's lovely when you first meet somebody that they know you. If they've gone through all that, and all you now have to do is carry them over the line. But it's very important, isn't it, that personal touch? Pick
them up and take them over the front doorstep. Hi, we're married.
All right, let's wrap up, actually. I've asked you one of my final questions, but so I'm going to supplement that with a different one. I usually ask, what's the most important thing somebody starting out online? Actually, let's do this anyway. Somebody starting out online who wants to raise money. There's the first thing that what's the top of mind, the most important thing that they should keep in mind?
That they have content on their website that explains to people what they do, and in a voice and a message that speaks to the investor.
My second sign-off question, and that's this, isn't it? It's in a nutshell. What has been the hardest lesson you've personally learned online?
Just for fun on this conversation, I'm going to say I invested in a company that was not real estate, only having read online and not spoken to anyone, and boy, are they moving slower than they thought they were going to.
Okay.
That was an online lesson I learned.
All right.
I should have called.
I should have called. Exactly. All right. Well, all right. Good. That's a very good one. And finally, what are your personal daily habits that keep you successful and productive in your online activities?
Oh, in my online. I was going to say I go to the gym every morning before I go to work, which that's what keeps me productive and happy, I think. In our online, being human. I'm going to keep going back to that one. I'm also a huge fan. If somebody likes something on our social, or if somebody comments on our blog or something, to respond to them right away with some nice comments back. Now, we are not attracting thousands of people a day. That's not how our business functions. But so I don't know whether that's something that these people that are listening to your podcast would have the ability to do if they're getting hundreds and hundreds of people a day. But boy, responding and saying, thanks so much. It wins you a new friend in your world, because they will go back and look you up, and they will get in touch with you, and they will link in with you, and because they got a human response, and it will perhaps carry them over the line into our business.
That's really interesting. That's a really interesting point. Yeah. I've been thinking about that a lot, actually. Even when somebody likes an article and doesn't comment, just to write back and say, thanks for the like or something. It's courtesy. It doesn't take a lot of time to do it.
And it allows them to meet you, virtually meet you.
Right, exactly. Judy Brower Fancher, thank you so very much for your time today. It's an enormous pleasure. It's an enormous pleasure working with you.
Thank you.
Great pleasure doing this podcast with you.
Well, it's an honor to be on with you, Doctor. I really appreciate your time, and I will look forward to continuing to work with you.
That was fellow marketing influencer award winner Judy Brower Fancher of the Brower Group. Be sure to check out the podcast page for today's episode, where you'll find links to Judy and her social media channels, and of course to her website. You can also access the whiteboard workshop there, where I walk you through how to build the exact same digital marketing system that we build for clients, like the one actually that Judy and I work with. So you can build one yourself to raise money online for your real estate projects. And that's all on the podcast page at gowercrowd.com. Hey, thanks so much for listening. It's really kind of you to spend your time with me. And thank you, Judy, for being my guest today. I really, really enjoyed talking to you. And I enjoy working with you. So look forward to many more years of that, all being well. That's it for this episode. I'll see you next time around. And for now, this is Dr. Adam Gower signing off.